The Odyssey glided silently through the emptiness of space, its massive hull cutting through the darkness with a quiet hum. Captain Morgan stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the screen, watching the alien star system come into view. This was it, the place where the mysterious signal had originated. The signal had been a strange mix of radio waves and what seemed like encrypted messages, and the crew had spent weeks trying to decode it. But the message was simple, though its meaning was unclear. We are waiting. It had to be a sign of intelligent life, something humanity had longed for since they first ventured into space. As the ship neared the star system, the sensors picked up something unexpected. An enormous ancient structure, drifting motionless in the vast black void. The station was massive, far larger than anything the crew had ever seen. It had the shape of a vast, segmented ring, with several spires extending outward like twisted fingers reaching into the stars. The surface of the station was a dull, dark color, pocked with craters and scars, as though it had weathered countless battles. "Captain, look at this," Lieutenant Carter said, his voice tight with disbelief. "This isn't just a space station. It's a fortress." The crew watched in stunned silence as the station grew larger on the view screen. The entire ship felt smaller as they approached. It seemed so ancient, almost as though it had been abandoned for centuries. But then, something changed. Just as they reached the edge of the station's orbit, a strange light flickered from the spires, glowing faintly at first before growing brighter, almost as if the station was coming to life. Captain Morgan's gut tightened. "Get us closer, but stay at a safe distance. I don't trust this." The crew quickly sprang into action, adjusting the ship's course. The closer they got, the more they realized just how vast the station really was. It was clear now that it wasn't abandoned. It was active, and it was reacting to their presence. But who, or what, was inside? "Captain," said Dr. Harris, the ship's scientist, his voice quivering with excitement, "I'm detecting energy readings. Not much, but something's here. I can't explain it." Just then, the ship's warning systems blared to life. The station had sent out an energy pulse, a warning of some sort. It was strange, unlike anything they had encountered before, and it struck the Odyssey with a force that rattled every part of the ship. "Shields up," Morgan barked, but it was already too late. The pulse struck their ship, causing a series of electrical surges. The lights flickered, and several of the bridge's control panels exploded with sparks. The ship lurched violently, throwing the crew off balance. "What the hell was that?" Carter shouted, grabbing onto the nearest rail to steady himself. "I don't know," Morgan said, his voice grim. But it wasn't a welcome. He quickly issued commands to check the ship's systems, and the damage was minimal, but it was clear that the alien station wasn't playing around. It was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The Onyx, the beings who had likely constructed this station, had some sort of power that humans couldn't comprehend. "We need to find out what we're dealing with," Dr. Harris said. His voice was calmer now, but still laced with excitement. "Captain, the station is sending out another signal." Morgan leaned over, eyeing the display. This time, the signal wasn't cryptic. It was a simple message, direct and to the point. "Approach the gates." It felt like a command more than an invitation. The choice was clear, but the risks were enormous. "We don't have much of a choice," Morgan said finally. "Prepare for docking. This is first contact, and we're not turning back." As the Odyssey carefully moved into position, something unexpected happened. From the depths of the station, a sleek alien ship appeared from an unseen docking bay. It was unlike anything the crew had seen before, its hull smooth and metallic, gleaming with a strange otherworldly sheen. The ship was fast, approaching the Odyssey with deadly precision. It didn't communicate with the Odyssey, but its presence was unmistakable. The ship's size dwarfed the Odyssey, and its energy readings were off the charts. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper's voice rang out, "they're coming straight for us." Before Morgan could respond, the alien ship's energy weapons fired. Bright, concentrated pulses of energy slammed into the Odyssey's shields, causing a violent tremor to run through the ship. The shields held, but barely. "What the hell is going on?" Carter yelled, as he scrambled to regain control of the ship's systems. "We're being targeted." "Not yet," Morgan said, his voice calm but filled with tension. "They're warning us. Stay steady." The alien ship moved into position, hovering just a few hundred meters away from the Odyssey. Its weapons powered down, but its presence alone felt like an enormous pressure, as if every being aboard the Odyssey was being weighed, judged by the strange alien beings watching them from inside the ship. The crew remained frozen, their eyes locked on the alien ship. Then, without warning, the station doors began to open. A large portal yawned open, revealing a shadowy interior filled with unknown technology. The station beckoned them in. The choice now was even clearer. It wasn't just about making contact. It was about survival. The Onyx were not offering a simple welcome. They were offering a trial, a challenge to humanity. And it was a challenge they would either rise to or fail. Captain Morgan's voice was resolute as he made the decision. "We're going in." But as the Odyssey slowly moved toward the station's opening, the crew felt a chilling sensation. Something was waiting for them inside, something that would test their very existence. The journey ahead promised to be one of discovery, but also danger. The Onyx were watching, and the real trial was just about to begin. The crew braced themselves for what awaited them inside the heart of the alien station. And though they had come seeking answers, they soon realized they might not like the answers they found. The Odyssey's engines hummed as the massive Titan-class ship edged closer to the alien station, its imposing structure looming like a forgotten monolith in the cold void of space. The station's surface shimmered faintly as if it was alive, its dark, segmented body almost pulsating with a hidden energy. The air on the bridge was thick with tension as Captain Morgan and his crew watched in silence. This was humanity's first real glimpse of another intelligent civilization, and no one knew what to expect. "We're approaching the docking bay." Lieutenant Carter's voice broke the silence, his eyes glued to the monitors. He adjusted the ship's course, guiding the Odyssey into position. But something didn't feel right. The closer they came, the more unnatural the station seemed. The hull of the station was covered in strange symbols, glowing faintly with an eerie, otherworldly light. The metallic surface looked ancient, yet oddly pristine, as though it had withstood the test of time without a single scratch. Captain Morgan's mind raced. Was this a trap? Were they being lured into the unknown by a force far beyond their comprehension? The signal had been clear, yet now, standing on the precipice of first contact, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The Onyx had to know they were coming. This station was too perfect, too well positioned. "Captain, I'm detecting something strange." Dr. Harris, the ship's chief scientist, said suddenly, his voice filled with unease. He turned from his console, his face pale. "There's an energy field around the docking bay. It's not like anything I've seen before. It's fluctuating." Fluctuating. Morgan's voice was sharp. "What do you mean?" "It's as if the station is adjusting to our presence. I can't get a solid reading." Harris' eyes darted back to the screens, trying to make sense of the data. "It's almost like the station is responding to us." Morgan's instincts screamed that something was wrong, but he pushed it aside. "Keep monitoring it. We'll proceed with caution." The ship slowly drifted closer, guided by Carter's steady hands on the controls. The docking bay was massive, and the opening appeared to swallow the Odyssey whole, its walls glowing with an inviting but unsettling light. As they crossed the threshold into the station, the crew felt a strange sense of disorientation, as if the very fabric of space around them had shifted. "We're inside," Carter said quietly, his voice betraying a hint of awe. "This is bigger than we thought." As they moved deeper into the docking bay, the Odyssey came to a halt. The station's surface seemed to hum with energy, and the walls shimmered as if alive, but there were no signs of movement. No sound, no life, just an eerie stillness that pressed down on the crew like a heavy weight. "Captain, we've docked," Carter reported. "The docking clamps are engaged. We're safe for now." But Morgan didn't feel safe. Something was terribly off. The silence was almost deafening, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching their every move. He ordered the crew to prepare for an exploration mission inside the station, though he felt an unease he couldn't explain. This was a first contact, yes, but with whom? The airlock hissed as it opened, and Morgan led the crew through the hatch into the alien station. The space beyond was vast, cavernous even, with high ceilings that disappeared into shadow. The walls were lined with strange, glowing symbols, flickering as if they held hidden meanings. The ground beneath their boots was smooth and unyielding, and the atmosphere was thick with an unknown energy, making every breath feel heavier. There was no sign of life, no visible creatures, no sounds, nothing. "This place feels," Carter began, but he didn't finish. He just shook his head, as if trying to make sense of what they were seeing. "Let's move forward," Morgan commanded. "Stay alert. We're not alone here." The crew spread out, exploring the dark, silent halls of the alien station. The air was cool, almost sterile, but there was an undeniable sense of presence that lingered in every corner. It was as though the station itself was alive, watching them, testing them. No doors opened, no windows revealed anything beyond. They were completely isolated, surrounded by technology so advanced that it felt like stepping into the future. Yet the station's emptiness told a different story. Then suddenly, a humming sound broke the silence. At first it was faint, almost imperceptible, but it grew louder, reverberating through the walls and into their bones. The crew stopped dead in their tracks, their senses heightened. Something was happening. Before anyone could speak, the walls of the station shifted. Massive, mechanical arms, each one covered in alien symbols, extended from the walls like clockwork, reaching out toward the crew. The mechanical arms were intelligent, acting as if they knew exactly where to go. It was clear that they weren't just automated. They were alive, a part of the station itself. The crew took a step back, their weapons ready, but the arms didn't attack. Instead, they began scanning the crew. Small beams of light swept over them, and the crew felt the hairs on the back of their necks stand up as they realized they were being analyzed, perhaps judged. Captain Morgan stepped forward, trying to remain calm. "What do you want from us?" he called out, his voice echoing through the empty space. There was no response, only the soft hum of the station's machinery. But the mechanical arms continued their scanning, moving around the crew, slowly but deliberately. Suddenly, the humming grew louder, and the walls shuddered as if something ancient and powerful was awakening. The crew's breath caught in their throats as a massive doorway began to open at the far end of the chamber. The lights flickered, and the entire room seemed to come alive with an otherworldly energy. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, but Morgan was resolute. "We're going through," he said. "We're here to make contact, and we will. Stay close." They moved toward the doorway, the heavy air pressing down on them as they approached. As they crossed the threshold, they found themselves standing in a room unlike anything they'd seen before. The walls were lined with alien technology, strange devices that hummed with energy, and in the center of the room stood a figure, a being unlike any human had ever encountered. It was tall, with glowing eyes and a form that seemed to blur at the edges, as if it were both part of the station and something else entirely. The Onyx were not just a species, they were something more, something vast, and the crew was standing before them now, facing the first real test of humanity's place in the universe. Morgan took a deep breath. "We come in peace," he said, his voice steady but filled with awe. But the figure said nothing. It simply watched them, its glowing eyes reflecting the weight of the universe itself. The figure in the chamber stood motionless, its glowing eyes piercing the darkness like two orbs of light. The crew of the Odyssey stood frozen, a mix of awe and fear creeping into their expressions. Captain Morgan could feel his heart pounding in his chest. They had come to make contact with an alien civilization, but now that they were face to face with something truly other, something beyond human understanding, the weight of the situation felt almost unbearable. For a long moment, the silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. The alien being didn't move, didn't speak. It simply watched, its eyes scanning the crew with an intensity that made the air around them seem charged with unseen energy. Captain Morgan resisted the urge to look away. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, first contact, and he couldn't afford to show any weakness. "We come in peace," Morgan repeated, his voice steady, though his mind raced. The words felt hollow in the face of the unknown. Could this being understand him? Was it even interested in peace, or was it a harbinger of something far darker? The figure's form was alien, even in the way it stood. Its body was tall and slender, its skin dark and shimmering, as if it were made of liquid metal. There were no visible features of a face, just smoothness, as though its physical appearance was constantly shifting, like the outline of a mirage. Its presence felt ancient, as if it had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. The crew could feel its weight of history, pressing down on them. Just as Captain Morgan began to doubt whether they were getting through, the being moved. Not a step, not an arm raised, just a ripple in the air. And with that ripple, the room seemed to shift. The walls hummed and flickered as if reacting to the alien's presence. A soft, almost melodic voice reverberated through the chamber, and though it wasn't spoken aloud, it was clear in every mind on the bridge. It was a telepathic message, one that bypassed words altogether and went straight to their thoughts. "You are different." The crew flinched as the voice echoed in their minds, each word heavy with meaning. They had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have prepared them for the overwhelming intensity of the telepathic communication. Captain Morgan took a step forward, trying to meet the being's unblinking gaze. "We are humanity," he said slowly, his voice calm, though his heart was racing. "We come from Earth, from a distant world. We seek knowledge, understanding, and peace." The alien figure didn't respond at first, simply observing them. Then, as though considering his words, the being finally spoke again, though this time it was more of a feeling than a voice. The crew felt it in their minds, a series of images and emotions, flickering like a slideshow in fast forward. The first image was of a vast, sprawling city, not human, but something far older. The architecture was alien and strange, as if built by beings who understood forces far beyond human comprehension. The second image was of destruction. Cities in ruins, entire landscapes scorched and barren. The third image was more cryptic, a closed door, an invisible force field, something that blocked their way forward. And then a feeling, a warning. The crew stood in silence as the images faded. The figure before them was still, but the message had been clear. The alien being had shown them something, a history of its own civilization, one that was once mighty but had faced its own collapse. The ruins of its past were a testimony to its strength and its downfall, and it seemed to be communicating the consequences of failure. It didn't take long for Captain Morgan to understand. The Onyx, these ancient beings, weren't just testing humanity, they were judging them. The images had been a reminder that peace could only be achieved if humanity proved itself worthy. If they failed this trial, the consequences could be far worse than death. They could be erased from existence altogether. The telepathic presence grew more intense, and the crew felt as though the very space around them was closing in. The alien was speaking to them now, but it wasn't with words. The sensation was overwhelming. And for a moment, Morgan felt as though he might lose his grip on reality. "The trial has begun," the voice echoed in their minds. "Your survival depends on your understanding of the path. You must prove you are worthy, or you will be erased. The onyx will test you, as they have tested countless others before you. Will you stand or fall? The words were simple, yet their weight was immense. The crew exchanged nervous glances, realizing the stakes of their mission had just escalated to something far more dangerous. This was no longer about exploration or diplomacy. It was a test of humanity's survival. They were not just visitors. They were subjects in a trial, one that could mean the end of everything if they failed. Captain Morgan stepped forward again, this time with more authority. "We understand the risk," he said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of his decision. "But we will not fail. Humanity will rise to this challenge." The alien being, or rather the force behind it, did not respond in words. Instead, it let out a low hum, and the room around them seemed to shift once more. Suddenly, the walls flickered with light, and a new door, a passage, opened before them. The way forward was clear, but the crew now understood. It wasn't just an invitation. It was a test. The passage led to what could be their salvation, or their destruction. "Move out," Morgan commanded, his voice unwavering. "We have no choice but to face the trial head-on." With that, the crew moved as one, stepping into the unknown once again. As they crossed the threshold, a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. Whatever awaited them beyond that door was no ordinary challenge. It was a trial of existence, one that would push humanity to its limits. Every step they took was a reminder of the weight of the decision they had made. They had come here to make contact, but now they were in the midst of something far larger than they could have ever anticipated. And as they ventured deeper into the alien station, they realized that the Onyx were watching, waiting to see if humanity would pass their ultimate test. And as they moved forward, the crew could only wonder, what would it take to prove humanity was worthy of survival in this ancient, unforgiving galaxy? Would they rise, or would they fall? The answers lay ahead, and the trial had only just begun. The Odyssey's crew moved deeper into the alien station, the eerie silence pressing down on them like a heavy blanket. Every step they took reverberated through the cold, metallic halls, amplifying the tension that gripped them all. The passage they had entered was long and narrow, stretching out ahead of them like the maw of some vast, unknowable creature. The walls were adorned with strange, shifting symbols, an alien language whose meaning remained as elusive as the station itself. The air felt dense, almost charged, with an energy they couldn't explain, but they had no choice but to press forward. Captain Morgan led the way, his senses heightened, his mind racing with the implications of what had happened. The trial, the warning, the Onyx, they were no longer visitors. They were participants in something far greater than they had imagined. And as they ventured deeper into the heart of the station, the gravity of their situation became impossible to ignore. The crew was silent now, each person lost in their thoughts. Lieutenant Carter, ever the pragmatist, kept his eyes darting between the walls and the floor, his fingers twitching near the controls of his sidearm. Dr. Harris, meanwhile, had begun muttering to himself in a low voice, trying to make sense of the alien symbols that danced across the walls. His scientific curiosity had always been one of his greatest strengths, but now it seemed more like a burden. The unknown was no longer a mystery to explore. It was a dangerous force that could unravel everything they had known. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper's voice crackled through Morgan's earpiece, pulling him out of his thoughts. "I'm picking up something off to the left." A doorway. Morgan looked up and gestured for the crew to fall into formation. They approached cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick, strange air. As they neared the door, the humming sound grew louder, vibrating through the walls in a way that seemed to be synchronized with their own movements. The door was circular, made of a dark, reflective material that shimmered with a strange glow, almost as if it were alive. At its center was a symbol, an intricate pattern that seemed to pulse with energy, as if it were waiting for something. The crew halted a few meters away, unsure of what to do next. The alien station had been silent, almost like a mausoleum. But now, this doorway was different. It was an invitation, or perhaps a challenge. Morgan stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with resolve. It's time. We need to know what's on the other side. As if answering his command, the symbol at the center of the door flared to life, and the door slid open with a low groan, revealing what lay beyond. The crew stepped forward, cautiously entering the new chamber. The room they found themselves in was vast, almost cavernous. The walls stretched up, high into darkness, and the floor beneath them seemed to ripple like liquid. In the center of the room stood a platform, encased in a glowing circle. The platform was raised slightly, but there was no way to tell what it was for. Surrounding the platform were more of the same symbols, glowing, shifting in patterns that were hypnotic, almost as if they were alive, watching. Dr. Harris moved forward, intrigued by the technology. This is incredible," he whispered, his voice reverberating in the stillness of the room. "This is far beyond anything we've ever seen." Morgan didn't share his enthusiasm. He was too cautious, too aware of the danger that lay in everything around them. They were in the heart of an ancient alien structure, and whatever was on the other side of this door was not to be taken lightly. Without warning, a hum filled the air, low and resonant. The crew looked around, but no source could be found. The glow of the symbols began to pulse faster, like a heartbeat, and the platform in the center of the room started to glow brighter, its edges shifting and moving as if it had a life of its own. "Get back," Morgan shouted, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But before anyone could react, the room seemed to come alive. The walls themselves rippled, and the air crackled with energy. The platform suddenly erupted in a flash of blinding light. For a split second, the crew couldn't see anything, their eyes burned by the intensity of the light. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. In the place of the platform now stood something else. A figure, tall and radiant, was standing before them. It was humanoid, its features sleek and smooth, its skin glowing with an ethereal light that radiated an intense energy. But it wasn't the figure itself that shocked the crew. It was the sheer presence it exuded, the overwhelming power that seemed to pulse from every inch of it. The being did not speak, but its presence filled the room, its energy weaving itself into the very fabric of reality. The crew felt it, an immense weight, as though the very air around them had been compressed, pulling them closer to the alien. It was otherworldly, far beyond anything they had encountered before, and as the being's eyes, shifting pools of light, fell upon them, the crew felt themselves drawn in, unable to look away. A deep voice echoed in their minds. This time, it wasn't just a message. It was a command, a demand. "You have arrived at the heart of the trial," the voice reverberated through their thoughts. "You seek to prove your worth. But do you understand the consequences of failure?" Captain Morgan stood firm, his eyes narrowing. "We understand. We will prove ourselves." The being's eyes flared brighter, almost as though it were considering his words. Then, just as quickly, the presence of the being seemed to fade, retreating into the very air, leaving only the residual hum of power in its wake. The crew stood in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. What was that?" Carter whispered, his voice shaking. Dr. Harris was equally lost for words. That wasn't just a being. That was an entity. An intelligence that transcends anything we could imagine. The silence in the chamber was thick, like the calm before a storm. No one knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain. They were no longer in control. The trial had begun, and they had just been tested in a way that humanity could never have anticipated. The Onyx weren't just watching them. They were shaping them, guiding them toward an unknown fate. Captain Morgan felt the weight of their journey press upon him. The Onyx had made it clear. Failure wasn't an option. They had to succeed, or humanity would face the consequences. And as they moved toward the next phase of the trial, Morgan's thoughts raced. What was this trial about? What did the Onyx want from them? And more importantly, could humanity truly rise to this challenge, Or would they be swept away by forces far beyond their comprehension? With no answers, only the path ahead, Captain Morgan took a deep breath and gave the command. We continue forward. We prove that humanity belongs in this universe.